Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. So what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, it's another one in my inspiration series and we're going to look at the English watercolourist Trevor Chamberlain, who's been a favourite of mine for many years. But we're also going to delve a little bit deeply into one of the things I find that my beginner students struggle with the most is getting those wet in wet blends right. So we're going to be having a look at painting this lovely morning misty scene, heavily influenced by Trevor Chamberlain. So come and join me and we'll paint this step by step together. Okay, so for this book I've had for about 10 years. I think I might have got it from a charity shop, and it's perfectly titled A Personal View, Light and Atmosphere in Watercolour. Now, he painted both in watercolour and oils and was known for getting out on plein air and painting most of his work from life. Now I believe, and I hope I'm right, that he still paints today at the grand old age of 92. Look at that fabulous sky. What I love about his paintings is the mood he creates in such a simple but effective way. No overcomplications, lots of wet in wet blends of colour suggesting detail without painting it. This lovely scene of Venice really uses the medium to its maximum. Again, those wonderful wet in wet shadows. I mean, look at that gorgeous shaft of light across the road illuminating the side of the figure. But it was this painting which really caught my attention. The sense of light and the simplicity really appealed. So it's this painting that today's tutorial is based on. Although it's very important to note that I'm not going to try and copy it exactly. There would be no point in that, but use it simply as inspiration for my own version. And also, I'm not suggesting in any way that this is how he would have painted it. For a start, he would have been sitting there early one September morning, so his description says, while I'm here with the comforts of my cosy studio. Today's materials, my paper is some Arches. It's cold press finish, 300 pound, 100% cotton, super thick so it won't need stretching, but of course, any decent watercolour paper will do. My colours today, my warms, yellow ochre, cadmium orange, burnt sienna and burnt umber, and just two cooler colours, cobalt blue and dioxazine purple. And for my brushes, a large Harkay brush, and from my range, 3/4 inch flat, number 12 and number 6 round, and of course my trusty number 3 rigger. So I did do a quick sketch first, just so I could test out some of my colours. Off we go, and because we're working wet in wet, I'm starting using my Harkay brush and completely wetting the whole sheet of paper. And I'm starting by mixing this purpley colour up, just adding a touch of yellow ochre into my purple. It's a nice watery mix, and straight in, and using my flat brush, getting the colour down quickly. Okay, something to be aware of when painting wet in wet. So let's just say you've started by painting in a fairly simple flat wash. And you want to drop in a second colour in wet. For a start, it's important that you do it fairly quickly, so have the colour premix ready to go. But equally important is to make sure that the colour you're dropping in, for it to be accepted by the original wash, it has to be at least the same or even stronger a paint consistency. Because if you've waited a little too long and paint in a weaker, wetter consistency, then when it dries, inevitably you're going to get an unwanted bloom or back run. So continuing on with my sky, I'm just adding in some yellow ochre. And I'll list all the colours I'm using in the titles below. So another thing you always have to consider with watercolour is that as they dry, they're going to dry at least a good 10-15% lighter, so just be aware of that. Oh, that purple's a bit bright, let's just blend it in a little. Now for the tree, and I'm still using my flat brush and trying to work as quickly as possible. I really don't want those first washes to dry out. And definitely this consistency is stronger than the wash below. And you can see that the colour guides that I'm giving you below are just rough estimates. I'm picking up all sorts of colours on my brush. And I'm trying to give this tree shape here a slightly darker value on the right to suggest some shadows. Now, I know I say this a lot on my channel, but this is where things get exciting, when you really let the paint work for you and do its own thing. That's when you get those happy accidents. And if you are worried about it drying out too quickly, then just give it a quick spray. And here I'm tilting my board to an angle of about 45 degrees just to let the paint move down. It gets those nice natural blends. Now, I did want to read you something which I took from Trevor Chamberlain's book, which I found fascinating, but I'm not sure where I stand copyright-wise reading from his book, so if next week's tutorial's from a cell, you'll understand why. This is what he says: "The outcome can sometimes be unpredictable, and some of the medium's most attractive effects are the results of accidents that can be induced but never entirely planned. I find such exhilaration in knowing that I'm treading a narrow line between triumph and disaster." Now, I love that. Now, to really darken my burnt umber, I'll just add in a touch of cobalt blue. But not mixing it too much, as I do like a little separation of the colour once it's on the paper. And this here is just to suggest perhaps some trees in the distance, but it's all very loose and almost semi-abstract. Now, I will say that this is a good project to use 100% cotton paper, as it will stay wet that little bit longer than pulp-based papers. And to create that mistiness that he got in the original painting, it really is important that these go in wet and we get those soft edges. And this big flat brush is helping me get those washes in quickly. Now, the washes are beginning to dry, but I'm still getting a nice soft fuzziness to these bushes and branches and grasses. So here I'm just taking a damp brush and lifting out some of the paint so I get this nice little sense of light directly below where I've placed the sun. Again, this will help to give the impression perhaps of some water or a stream. And here I'm just suggesting a little sunburst coming through the trees. Again, by lifting out the colour. And here I'm just dropping in a few blobs of clean water, which hopefully will give an interesting sunburst effect. Now I've switched to my number 6 brush to put in these grassy details, burnt umber again, and you can see it's still damp enough to give a nice soft edge. And here I'm just lightly tapping in some little splats of clean water. Now, it is still damp, and what you get is a nice subtle motley effect, similar to what you'd get with salt, but not quite as obvious. here I'm just using my directional splat technique to just add in some texture here in the foreground. So now we need to let this totally dry. So it's a perfect time for a short break, and it's got to be a glass of September morning misty Merlot. Yeah, okay, I made this one up. Couldn't find anything. So I've wanted those little stream highlights to stand out a little bit more, so I'm going to put a light tint over the whole of the bottom here. So clean water over the lot, and then this light value tint goes in, but I'm leaving out those areas where the light is. I just felt generally it was a little bit too white here at the bottom. And while it's still wet, let's put a few more little splats in. So I'm letting that dry again, and I'm just softly spraying the tree area here, but not saturating the paper. Then with this brownish colour on my number 6 brush, I'm just lightly painting in the main trunks and branches, but leaving plenty of gaps. I don't want to make this look too obvious. And softening the bottoms here with clean water, as I want a nice natural transition. And now for those really spindly branches, my favourite brush of all, my trusty number 3 rigger. And back to my number 6 brush here, and a fairly flat wash of burnt sienna, just to create a little bit of tree drama, should we say. But I'm being very careful I don't overwork this, because I don't want to lose those lovely soft original blends I have below. And now it's dry, a few hard edge bush and grass details using my number 6 brush. And with this slightly thicker consistency, I'm even picking up a little bit of dry brush. Some hard edge splats into the dry here. Next, with my magic scalpel, just to scratch out some glistening light, just to perhaps suggest a stream or even a pond. You really don't need to dig too deep, it's just really scratching off the paint off the surface. Mixed media time, and I'm using a creamy coloured pastel pencil just to add in a few highlights here. Now, I don't think this is something that Trevor Chamberlain would have used, although I did read that he used masking fluid from time to time. I just find this a much easier method. And perhaps a few little sapling things here in the foreground. And I think the advantage over a pastel pencil over masking out is you can rub with your finger and soften some of these edges. And here with a white pastel pencil just to add a few more little highlights. How about a few birds? And remember, try and make them different sizes and put their wings in slightly different positions, or it'll look like they're a formation flying team. 3 or 5 is always a good number. A good flower arranger will always tell you never put 2 or 4 in. There we go, all done, and this one fairly quick in just over an hour. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you will give it a go. And if ever there was a case of making this one your own, it's this one. So really experiment and splash around with those colours and try those wet in wet blends. That's where the magic happens. And in the meantime, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already. It is free. Leave a comment. I do read every single one. I can't always reply to them all. And I look forward to seeing you again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Have a great week, everyone. Cheers.